Yes, yes, guys. You know what time it is. It's your boys, Jack and David, here at the Irish Hotspur, bringing you some breaking news on Richarlison, originally reported by Bruno Andrade, who is a bit of an expert, I think, on Portuguese as well as Brazilian footballers, saying, Richarlison is apparently in advanced negotiations to be able to make a switch from Everton to Tottenham Hotspur. That was sort of his translated tweet, and the THFC reports came out saying Tottenham Hotspur and Everton are in advanced negotiations over a 60 million euro deal for Richarlison. The Brazilian has already discussed personal terms with Spurs. And so, everybody, we are just going to get a bit of a breakdown of his background as well as, the stats and everything. We're just going to do the background first on Richarlison. Then we're just going to get Dave's initial thoughts on this sort of rumor. In just this last season, he had 30 matches played, 10 goals and 5 assists. I believe 3 of those were penalties, so 7 non-penalty goals for Richarlison. Born in Nova Venecia, Brazil, I think in the state of Espírito Santo. Hopefully not too many connections to Nuno there. 25 years old, May 10th, 1997, so turning 26 next season. Height 1.84 meters, 6 feet inches. I feel like he's taller than that. I mean, the guy is kind of a bit of a bit of a monster, I must say. I think he's a lot taller than 6 feet. Striker, can play as a left winger. You could even maybe say plays as a right winger too. His youth career was over at America Mineiro over in Brazil. And then his market value right now over to Transfermarkt is 45 million pounds, and his contract expires in 2024. But the reported fee, as we just said, everybody, could be around 60 million euros. David, Richarlison, I mean, this initial rumor, does it make sense to you? Do you think this could happen? Are you getting goosebumps about it, excited about it? I mean, what are your thoughts?
No, do you know what? Look, Jack, I think, first of all, I definitely think it makes sense. At the end of the day, we've been crying out for adequate backup to Harry Kane,
Right.
but also someone that can play, anywhere across the front three. Look, Richarlison can play a striker, left winger, like you said, Jack. He's only 25 years of age. He's Premier League proven, so it's not like you're bringing in a striker from abroad and hoping he adapts to the Premier League. There's no adaptation whatsoever. He already knows what it takes to be a Premier League player. He's also a full international with Brazil, Jack. So for me, I think that's a massive plus. Again, speaks to how much of a proven player he is, Jack. And look, what I love about him, Jack, is actually his aggression and his passion. Some people can misconstrue that and they say it's volatile. It's not volatile. It's aggression and it's passion. And he's just waiting for the right manager to channel that in the right direction. And if anybody is going to do that, it's Conte. And you look at the work ethic of the guy as well, Jack. That's where you can channel that aggression. That's where you can channel that passion, and you can ultimately get a player that works hard up front, like a Rooney, like a Tevez. Early ages people mix that their aggression and their passion for volatility. But when you can channel it in the right way, that's the sort of player you can produce. But not only that, though, Jack, he stepped up when Everton needed him the most. He scored 6 goals in their last 9 games, and he also has finished the last or 3 out of the last 4 campaigns in double digits in terms of goals.
Yeah.
So for me, Jack, he's a proven goal scorer. He gets double digits. For me, I think this is a win-win situation for Tottenham. I think it's a good signing. What does it mean for Bergwijn? Could you potentially throw Winks in the deal to maybe get some off that price tag? If we get Richarlison, I do think it probably means Bergwijn's out the door. We know he's out the door anyway. But let's see if we can get rid of Harry Winks in a part of this, Jack.
Yeah, that'd be a nice little trade, similar to the Gio Lo Celso Pau Torres one. Just quickly, what I might want to add with Richarlison, everybody, before we break down the stats on the guy, I've actually noticed him ever since, I randomly was watching, Dave, his debut game when I was watching, I think, one of the first Premier League games of the season back in 2017. I just looked it up just to make sure how old I was. I think I was actually around 18 or 19 at the time. And then Richarlison was making his debut in the Premier League at 18 or 19 at the time for Watford. And Dave, when I was looking at the fact that this guy was just like, a bit older than me, and then I was seeing the size of him at like 19. I was just like, wow, where did they find this guy? It looks like he was made in a factory. And I feel like he is, sort of ever since then in the Premier League has been playing for some pretty horrible teams, like, let's be
Yeah.
honest, and has sort of stood out as always being a guy that maybe is way too good for those sort of teams, despite maybe what people may think of his sort of antics and whatnot.
Mm,
You can't deny that he's definitely leaps and bounds skill wise above a lot of his teammates when he was
yeah.
playing for Watford with Marco Silva. And then when he went over to Everton, especially this last season, like this Lampard at Benitez team, it's almost like a bit sad that he had to, play for a team like that. But he's worked exceptionally hard. He's an absolute animal when it comes to work rate and all those sort of things. I've always liked Richarlison, but let's see maybe what he could bring to Spurs. The fee is heavy, though. I will say the fee is heavy. Shots on target, maybe it would have been a lot less had he maybe been relegated. Maybe that was maybe on the cards before. But in terms of the stats, everybody, we're looking at all of his Premier League stats from this last season and then comparing him to all forwards in the Premier League with those stats. So you're comparing him to the likes of St. Maximin, you're comparing him to the likes of Sonny, you're comparing him to the likes of Harry Kane, almost any forward in the Premier League. That's who you're comparing him to with these sort of stats. And he doesn't really rank well. And Dave, I don't know how much I really need to break it down because I think his stats are really heavily, heavily influenced by the fact that he was playing for a horrible and really negative Rafa Benitez side and playing for a useless and clueless Lampard side at one stage. So it's almost
Yeah.
like as much as, we love to use stats around this channel and everything, to kind of back up what we're saying, the stats aren't going to back up what we've been saying about Richarlison, how much we like him, because they're going to show that maybe he isn't very good. But I'm going to make the conclusion, Dave, that I'll be honest, I think it's Rafa Benitez and this Lampard kind of systems that he's
I
been
agree.
dealing with. Also, just the fact that Everton team is pretty garbage to begin with.
I agree, Jack. Just quickly, like you have to understand when you're looking at these stats how bad Everton were under Rafa Benitez. They couldn't score goals, they couldn't create chances. So of course, it's gonna look bad on the stats. But when you actually look at the player and what he's done for Everton, like I said, Jack, he carried them through the last 9 games, scoring 6 goals. He turned up when the pressure was on, and it really mattered most. Look, Everton hasn't had a great campaign. It's hard to kind of judge the guy off any sort of stats, Jack,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
everybody is well aware of this player, like you said, from his time at Watford and his time at Everton and what he can produce. What I do like, Jack, is the fouls drawn. Now we just
Yeah.
need someone to take the free kicks.
Well, what I do like about him, Dave, is that despite his, huge, kind of, nature and like how big he is very
Mm,
clever, going down in a lot of situations. He's very tactful
he's a
about it
shithouse.
because, yeah, because at one stage, Dave, he's throwing an elbow, into your stomach, trying to hold the ball up. And then the next stage he goes down, like the touch of a feather, despite being like I said, like a 6'1", like sort of,
Yeah,
tank. And it is kind of funny to see. And I'll be honest, we all hate it in the Premier League, but once you have it on your team, I think you'll kind of love it, to be fair. And I think he'll probably win us a lot of penalties, could even win us good free kick situations, like you said, Dave. But you were talking about the work rate too. I mean, his pressures are absolutely fabulous, Dave. I mean, nearly 21 pressures a game. I mean, that is actually quite high up there for all forwards, and just kind of speaks to maybe that work rate that you were talking about. But I thought, Dave, what could be interesting is do we really compare him to Spurs players? I just don't know like how much you really learn from that. I kind of
yeah.
thought maybe what would be better is maybe you compare him to other sort of relegated or at least bottom tier, not bottom tier, bottom of the Premier League sort of kind of strikers that were also playing in struggling teams. So you would think that maybe they also had similar sort of stats in terms of their sort of opportunities, because
Not
it's kind of
only, not,
unfair to it's unfair to compare him to Jesus, because Jesus
mm,
plays for Man City. I think you have to compare him to other strikers that have had good seasons for other kind of, near the bottom of the Premier League teams.
and I think before, just quickly before you break them down, it's just worth mentioning, Jack. But the strikers we're going to compare him to are names that have been on Spurs fans' lips as well as maybe
Mm.
potentially coming into the club.
Mm, well said, Dave. Shots on target. Emmanuel Dennis, who I'm actually a huge fan of, I'll be honest, is far more lethal in front of goal. Shots on target percentage is what we're looking at. So it takes all of your attempts and all of your shots on target and just makes, nice little average and percentage from it. So clearly, Emmanuel Dennis, maybe a bit more ruthless, you could say, when in front of goal, at least, getting it on target. Key passes per game, which is a pass that leads to a shot on goal. Emmanuel Dennis, a bit more creative there. What is interesting is that you would say is that Emmanuel Dennis, like Richarlison, has played like everywhere from striker to left wing, kind of
Mm.
this season. So they are kind of similar sort of players. completed passes. Emmanuel Dennis is able to complete more passes per game. And again, maybe that speaks to how bad Everton are. The fact that Richarlison is only limited to 12 passes a game. Passes made under pressure, though, Richarlison is much better in that regard. And I do kind of feel like his hold-up play is sometimes a bit underrated. Shot creating actions, he's not really as good as creating chances as Emmanuel Dennis was this last season. And then pressures, though, Dave, he is out beating Dennis there. And then last one, players dribble past. I mean, Dennis is kind of a baller, I must say, on the ball. But Richarlison is good at skinning past this man too, Dave, I would say. He is good on the ball, and he is tricky, Richarlison. And he is kind of a nightmare because he's a bit like Kulusevski, Dave, where if he does, go the right way, like it's not like you're going to try to muscle him there. Like he is going to also, show you the weight room.
Yeah, and look, we also have to remember, up until Roy Hodgson came in at Watford, they did try to play a bit more expansive than what they usually do. They did catch a lot of teams on the counter-attack, and he had other players around him, Dennis did. With Richarlison, look, Calvert-Lewin was out for the majority of the season. You also have the likes of, the only one that you really could say that would have helped Richarlison in the forward department, especially under Benitez's team, would have been your man Gordon. Iwobi, players like that, absolutely useless, Jack. Everton had no midfield as well, could barely get him the ball at times. We have to remember Richarlison played a lot of this season on the Rafa Benitez team, which was just pure. We know Rafa Benitez football. It is sit back, it's boring, and try and catch them on the counter. So I still find it hard to judge him off the stats. But with Emmanuel Dennis, I do expect his to be a bit better. Although they ended up getting relegated, they got relegated because they were trying to be more expansive than what they ever have been in the Premier League.
And that's a really good caveat there, Dave. Some good points there, to maybe, bring some context into things. I would say to Emmanuel Dennis, though, this isn't even comparing him, though. He did actually have, I think, 10 goals at the end of the season. They were all non-penalty goals, also all non-penalty goals as well. So someone that maybe we could have taken a look at for sure. Ivan Toney, we could compare him, I thought, to Ivan Toney because a lot of people like, Ivan Toney. They mention him as, maybe a good heir to Harry Kane and a good backup striker to Harry Kane. I kind of makes sense because he has fantastic hold-up play and kind of good creative ability. But again, maybe kind of interestingly, Dave, it really shows how poor Everton are because even Ivan Toney gets more opportunities to do things with the ball than even Richarlison did. I mean, I would say their shot conversions on target are kind of the same. Like, I guess Ivan Toney wins out by 0.3%, but clearly they're around the same. Key passes, Ivan Toney, I think that makes sense. He is a very creative forward. Completed passes, he gets more completed passes per game. Passes made under pressure, though, again, like that does speak again to Richarlison's ability to be able to, complete passes while, everybody just, all over him and everything. He is quite exceptional at that. Shot creating actions, they're actually quite close to each other, but Toney, again, pretty creative forward, able to create more. Pressures kind of make sense. Richarlison, I feel like works harder than Toney, but also, kind of plays all over the pitch. So maybe just, and when he's playing left wing, he just gets more opportunities to, have more pressures in a game. But he's also better at skinning his man. I think, Dave, the big difference between maybe Ivan Toney, I would say, and Richarlison is that Richarlison would be able to play across the front line. And I must say, like, I think he'd work probably a bit harder than Ivan Toney as well, like when you're bringing him on.
No, 100%.
Maybe a bit hungrier. It might be a bit, he's just one of those guys, like you said, a bit of a shit house. He'd just be hungry when he comes on.
Richarlison is just one of them, Jack. You've just got to kind of wind him up before he goes out on the pitch, and he will just run. He will absolutely harass that back line from fullback to fullback, right to the centre backs, all the way across. Richarlison will just shithouse them, harass them. The difference between someone like a Toney and Richarlison, Toney, you need to kind of put the ball into him in the box for him to get his goals. With Richarlison, he is capable of skinning his man and creating his own sort of goals. Look, I think Richarlison will
more
be
of a Swiss
very,
Army
very
knife
good
kind
signing.
of player, you might say.
100%. And look, everybody knows me. I hate players that have bad attitudes, that act a dick around Tottenham Hotspur. But I don't see Richarlison doing that. Richarlison, I think, is an angry footballer because a part of it definitely has to do with him staying at Everton for so long, being under Rafa Benitez, not playing to his sort of strengths. And a man like Conte, Jack, will channel that, and you will get a very, very fine player with Richarlison. But not only
you could
that,
almost
Jack,
see Lukaku energy kind of in Richarlison. You could see Conte channeling that, right?
100%. But Jack, you also look across our front line. Kane, Son, Kulusevski, superb footballers. but none of them are real shit houses. Whereas this guy will wind up opposition defenders, and I can't wait for that. We need some shit housers in here. I'm all for Richarlison. We need players of his, a player or two of his sort of temperament, angry all the time. And Conte, trust me, will channel that, and you'll get a very, very fine player, Richarlison. Like I've already said, Jack, just a recap: Premier League proven at Watford and at Everton. 6 goals in his last 9 games. And what that shows me is when the pressure cooker was on, he turned up. He did not shy away.
Yeah.
We're talking about double figures, 3 out of his last 4 seasons, Jack. So you're getting a guy that knows how to find the net. Okay, is he as good as Harry Kane? No. Is he as good as Son? No. But what he does do, and what we've lacked this season, is have an adequate backup. Someone that wants to come in off the bench, has a point to prove. Someone that you can drop in into the cup games, or if we get out Champions League group and it's done and you've got one game left, you can play him in them games. Rest Harry Kane, rest Son. I think it's a win-win situation, this signing for Tottenham. I would love to see them get it over the line, Jack. And look, whether Harry Winks could make way, maybe take a bit off that price tag, I'm not so sure. We'll wait and see. But one thing I will say, everything got that Gazprom and that Russian oil thing, sponsorship taken away from them altogether. So in order for them to act in the market this summer, I'm presuming they do actually will have to sell somebody. So we could end up getting our man, Jack.
Maybe hence why the Richarlison fee is so big. Actually, probably that could kind of explain it there. Good point, Dave. Good chance to maybe bring in a backup striker. We've been calling for it for years. This is a pretty adequate one, I would say that. And then maybe also a good opportunity to get rid of Harry Winks as well. Let us know what you guys think about that sort of deal in the comments down below. Let us know what you think of Richarlison. Is he the right sort of backup striker that you want at Spurs? Again, let us know in the comments down below. Feel free to throw in the super thanks if you did kind of enjoy this sort of content. We're going to continue to bring up these kind of sort of transfer breakdowns for you guys. But as always, everybody, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you
and
Spurs.
In Conte we trust.
In Conte we trust.